Welcome to Frog Talk, an Auction Frogs podcast series all about events and fundraising in a post-2020 world. For more information on Auction Frogs and the services we offer, visit auctionfrogs.org today.
Hi, this is Cory Mikhals, and this time around, it's an interesting subject as we've been making our way through the pandemic and the mandates. And last year, when everything first came down, it was this big surprise. I mean, no one was prepared. And of course, the springtime, that was a huge time for the beginnings of fundraisers, galas, all of that everyone was like, what do we do now? We can't put people together. And so it was this shift that had to happen. Now as we're, a year in, over a year, and people are wanting, I know everyone wants to be able to be in that room and to be able to see each other and to have that human interaction. And so with the vaccines and with all of that, people think, okay, we're going to be able to have our gala again. Well, maybe not. So you have to be prepared to pivot again. Last year, you had no choice but to pivot. Now you're going to potentially have to, because things change every single day. There's new strains of the virus. There's new mandates. We don't know what's going to happen. So we're going to talk about being prepared and having that contingency plan to be able to pivot and know when is the appropriate time to make that change. I've got Kayla and Melanie this time around to talk about that pivot and being prepared for what is going to happen. So Kayla, I know a lot of clients you talk to, they're wanting that experience. They're wanting to be able to have that gala, whether it's in a hybrid type event or going back to the way that they've always done it, to feel, if nothing else, normal again. But you have to be prepared that might not happen.
Yeah, Cory, I think it's really important this year more than ever to be flexible and to plan with contingency plans in mind. None of us really know what's going to happen or what the rules are going to be in terms of having an in-person event. And so having a timeline where you know when you need to pivot and how you need to pivot is just a really good practice right now. I think it's always a good practice, but especially now.
Yes, you've got your room, you have your venue, you have your auctioneer, you have all these things that you have always done to prepare for a gala. But what happens when that doesn't work out, or if that doesn't work out, because that is very much the potential. What do you do then? And there's a whole lot of pitfalls from, your deposits to all these other things. What should people think about, Mel?
Well, I think it's important to keep in mind when is the most cost-effective time for you to change your mind. We have a lot of states across the country right now that are allowing events to happen in either outdoor venue spaces or in smaller capacities, whether they're under 100, under 50 people. Here in Idaho, we're still at no more than 10 people in a room. So it's a little different for us over here, but regardless of where you are, it's important to keep track of the regulations and the restrictions in your area, and then to partner with a solution like Auction Frogs to help you make that pivot when the time is necessary. A lot of people last year experienced that they were still going to do their event come hell or high water, and they weren't able to because their venue canceled their event. Mm-hmm. And then not only were they out their deposit unless they wanted to use it next year, or they'd spent all this money on rentals that they couldn't get back. So it's really important to keep in mind what your plan B needs to be in order to effectively format the timeline to get your money out of those reservations.
Well, and you have to also look at, Kayla, is 50 people, if you're blessed with the ability to have 50 people or 100 people in a venue, is that going to be enough to make it worthwhile for the expense versus doing a virtual event where you don't have to worry about what the mandates are, and you can be able to reach a worldwide audience if that's where your donor base is.
Yeah, I think what I always say is, virtual events are not right for every client, but there are a lot of benefits, and one of those is the price point. You're putting usually less money in than when you would for an in-person gala, but you're also getting more back for it that has a longer life. Videos that can take you through the whole year and all of your marketing campaigns and things like that. That's not to say that in-person events don't still have value, because I definitely think that they do. And I think that once things open up again, they're going to be really fun and joyful and probably very profitable, because people are going to be so happy to be back in the room raising the paddle instead of at home bidding online. But if the conditions don't allow, virtual is always a good fallback. You do want to make sure that you have enough time to execute it properly. So if you are pivoting, it's good to give yourself at least 4 weeks to make that transition from in-person to virtual. But there's things that you can do ahead of time to make that transition easier, like just have your silent auction be online, set it up online with Auction Frogs, so that if you do have to transition to virtual, that's already done. And if you are able to do it in person, people can bid online from home, before the event, after the event, at the event, on their mobile devices, things like that.
Well, something to keep in mind is no matter how much you want to be able to have that in-person experience again, our world is forever changed. No matter what happens with mandates, there is going to be people for the foreseeable future that are not going to want to go into a personal in-person event.
Especially when you think about the age of most of the donors. That's the vulnerable age. There's going to be a lot of people, like Cory said, that are not comfortable going back into an in-person gala. And I think that when I've, especially this year, when I've been talking to clients about in-person, what hybrid looks like, there really is no returning to the way it was before. There's no going back to normal. Things are going to be different because this pandemic caused a paradigm shift in the fundraising world and in the entire world. And so going back to galas, there are going to be some things that are similar, some things that look the way that they used to in some ways, but there's going to be a lot of it that doesn't look the same and never will, or doesn't look the same and won't for many years. Like how many people you have at a table, or maybe you're going to have to do your bidding mobily all the time because nobody's going to want to share pens and paper, things like that, that you're going to have to consider for a long time or perhaps forever.
Well, and Melanie, this is something with this change that it makes it even more important with the in-person events that you use the mobile bidding, because for your touchless check-in, for your bidding on silent auction, for your checkout, and keeping that as touchless as possible.
Yeah, I think the other cool thing about mobile bidding is that you still can open up your auction to people who can't come.
Yes.
And that's, we at Auction Frogs, we use two different platforms to do the same thing. So there's a bunch of different ways we can utilize our system to accommodate what you need it to do. This idea of a hybrid event where you have bidders at home, bidders in the room, you have a live auction, you have a silent auction, you have paddle raise. It's very good in theory, but there's a lot of things we've learned over the last year about what to remember when you're considering doing that kind of hybrid event. If you're wanting to do a hybrid as your plan A, that perfectly positions you to transition to a virtual event if you need to, because you already have the ability to put your auction items online. You have a website that's built for you that you're able to communicate quick changes. You have emails and text messages you can send to your users. You have a program that's already planned to be streamed. So now it's a matter of recording it or doing a partial live component or doing it live. So there's so many other options you can do when you're considering a hybrid event that make that pivot that much easier when and if it has to happen.
Well, and this is not to brag. This is just the fact. We were the first ones to go to market with virtual events. We learned through the process of things that were the best practices for virtual events. We know what is going to work and things that don't work. And that's not to say we're not ever evolving, because we do with every event, with every need, with every donor base based on the nonprofit. There are little things that are going to be different based on your needs, and that's what we're here to do. And we've gotten really darn good at it. We have a full turnkey staff to where we have the 30 plus years in video production with Ellsberg Studio. We have, collectively with the Auction Frog staff, 100 plus years if you add everyone's different expertise in different parts of fundraising.
That makes me sound really old, by the way.
That's why I said collectively. We have a good staff. I've been doing hosting and for nonprofits and for galas and now virtual events. I 30 plus years experience. And so we have from host to the bidding platforms, to the video production, we have it all. And we're one of the few that have a full turnkey event. But it still takes time to make that pivot. So you have to be mindful of that. If you only give us a week or two to say, oops, we need to change to a virtual, can we do it? Yeah, but it's better with 4 to 6 weeks. So just really be mindful of what is happening in the world. What are the mandates in your state, in your area, and just keep your thumb on the pulse of what's happening with the world and specifically with your donor base.
I also think it's a good idea to remember, too, that marketing a virtual event is a very different endeavor than marketing an in-person event.
Yes.
And so that 4 to 6 week turnaround time is really important to get everybody on the same page and to fairly, be successful in marketing that event. Because you've spent all this time gathering attention for an in-person event, and now you have to pivot to this virtual one. Keeping it on the same day as your original event might not be the best option if you have to pivot that hard. So keeping your schedule and your calendar and your mindset open to what the flexibility should be is a good thing to prepare for as well.
Absolutely. Because unless you are doing your event based on, some type of specific date that is very important to your organization, you don't have to worry about the venue. You don't have to. The biggest thing you have to worry about is, do we already have a virtual event on that date? But other than that, you can shift the date around because you're not worried about some of those specific things that you do with an in-person type of event. So what are some of the things for people to really think about and to prepare for in case they need to make the pivot and be able to do it seamlessly with our help?
I think what you mentioned about dates, I think having some additional dates identified that you would be willing to pivot to if it called for it is never a bad idea. I also think identifying who your video resources locally would be, who that does videography, or even looking into your archives to see what kind of content you already have, just so that you can be aware, okay, if we pivot, we have nothing to work off of, we're going to need to go to this videographer to get started, or, well, we have quite a bit in archives that we can probably turn around a little quicker for a virtual event. That's a good thing to know. And kind of gauging, I think, with your audience, how they feel about it. I think people are going to get a good idea when they start to market an in-person event, how many people are comfortable with that. It's going to be, again, a big year of learning curves and getting creative and really communicating with donors and supporters. And I think you can gauge with them how comfortable they are in person and how comfortable they are virtually as well. There's lots of free survey tools, things that you can use to poll your audience and get feedback that I've found, clients of mine have had a lot of success with.
Well, I think it's an interesting thing that you brought up too, Kayla, because A lot of our clients that are planning to do in-person events this year so far are starting their ticket sales like months or two earlier than they did before, because they want to see where people are at. And so they do have enough time to make that shift if they think it's necessary. And then that way they don't have to sell 150 tickets and then figure out how to refund people, or if they're donating it back or whatever.
Well, and having a plan in place for refunds, stating that publicly, I mean, you see that a lot when you're booking anything right now. Even just ordering stuff online, they give you lots of warnings about shipping times. So if you're going to sell tickets ahead, which I think is a great idea, just indicate right then and there what your refund policy is going to be. Because, restrictions could change, meaning that the 150 you sell can't all attend in the same room. People may change their comfort level. People may get sick and not be able to attend. And they're going to want to know, okay, can I get my money back? What happens if I want to donate it? How does it all work? So clarifying that with your team internally, and then clarifying that for your supporters, is going to be really important.
Well, and if your event isn't until, say, the fall, you still have a lot of time to go. So you're still really hopeful that by then, we all want to believe our world's going to get a little more normal here sometime real soon, and specifically by the fall. You have a lot of time to be able to do that. Kayla brought up and Mel brought up a great thing as far as polling your donor base. Just because you want a in-person event, does your donor base really? Does the majority of them? So it gives you that time to be able to poll your donor base and find out what they want, what they're comfortable with. Did you do a virtual event last year already with us or with someone else? And did they like it? What did they like? What didn't they like? Do they want to do that again, or are they ready to get out there and attempt, having an in-person event? With the ticket sales long in advance, okay, that's one way to determine what people's engagement is and what their comfort level is with wanting to do an in-person event. But I think the polling and really getting, a lot more of the feedback from people is going to give you a better indication as to what, because every nonprofit's donor base is going to be a little different. So you got to also think about if you are specifically in one market. If you are a nonprofit that really your entire donor base is in one location, one town, one valley, whatever that happens to be, or do you have donors all around the country, all around the world? One of the things that I think a lot of like Chimpanzee Sanctuary Northwest, Sanaga Young, the National Hemophilia Foundation, there was a lot of those organizations that had a donor base that is spread literally around the world, that they were able to have such a bigger footprint with a virtual event and engagement with so many more people. For them, I think it's going to make sense forever, really, to do the virtual event and then have smaller in-person events, little luncheons, or, something that you're able to have that in-person experience, but you're not leaving out donors that couldn't be a part of it otherwise.
There's so much room for creativity for everybody as we move ahead into 2021. Virtual, like I said before, virtual events aren't for everybody. I think they're great. I mean, you'll never meet somebody that loves them more than I do. But I accept and acknowledge that they're not right for everybody. But that doesn't necessarily mean that going back to the in-person model is going to be functional either, from a rules standpoint and also from a comfort level with donors. But maybe doing a drive-in movie style fundraiser would work, or maybe, when the weather is nice in your area, doing some sort of outdoor picnic. There's so much creativity coming out of this, drive-by parades of fundraisers and things that you can do that have a more in-person touch, but still might be possible within certain limitations from both a, regulation standpoint and a donor comfort standpoint.
And I think it also keeps it cost effective.
I think a prime example was this private school that we did an event for pretty early on in the pandemic. And the year before, they had raised $200,000. but it cost them $30,000 plus to put on that in-person event. Their virtual event, we netted $190,000. So $10,000 less, but it cost a fraction of that $30,000. So they were actually $20,000 plus ahead over their in-person event from the year before. So that doesn't mean that's going to work that way for every organization based on your donor base. But when you start adding in catering and venue and auctioneer and all these different things, it gets expensive, where we can be able to do everything turnkey in-house and give you most of the time as much or more money at the end of the day.
I had a client just today tell me that she just feels so comfortable with what we're doing and with the event that we're helping her plan, because when it's a school, and they switch around and then people get assigned. Of course, she got assigned to this year. She had no idea what to do, and she was just expressing how appreciative she was of us sharing our expertise and guiding her so that she doesn't have to figure it out on her own. And that's what I think is so special about Auction Frogs and what we do, is we really combine everything that we know and also just this really passionate group of people that care about these nonprofits and what they're doing and what they're raising money for. And together over the last year, we've created, new things and been innovative, and we're still doing that. And I think that this year we're probably going to come up with more stuff that we never even thought possible last year as we start to look at sort of the gray area between virtual and in person.
I think it's important to recognize that when you're using a software company or a web app company like Auction Frogs to help navigate the fundraising universe that you're currently living in, it's important to recognize that just because everything feels different doesn't mean you need new tools. We have developed a lot of new things over the last year to help our user interface be more and more effective for our customers and their clients. But nothing has needed so great of an overhaul that it couldn't be done quickly. And I think about that with mobile bidding. Mobile bidding has always been touchless check-in. Mm-hmm. It's always been this hands-off approach to the event environment. And
so this is not new.
It's not new.
This is
a tried and true tested approach that works for hundreds of organizations across the country. So this is not something, we don't have to reinvent mobile bidding to make it effective for COVID. It's already great. And I think that's one of the things, is now just harnessing the power of those tools to reinvent the strategy on how it's used. And we've been able to customize solutions using the tools we already have for 99% of our clients in the last year. What's been interesting about that is to elevate that with a virtual event or a hybrid model, because you can use mobile bidding as your hybrid model. It's not hard, and it can already do 90% of the things that you wanted to do. We took it a step further to increase that 10% and built in some tools that are specifically effective for hybrid events. But there's not really a huge change in the way our platform works to make that pivot. And I think that that's something really important to investigate with any company that you're looking for, especially right now. Do you really need the newest, best, shiny, or is the tried and true what works best for you?
Well, and the beautiful thing, we kind of have both. We have the new shiny, the virtual events, the video vignettes, all those things. Those are the things that we added because of the need that has happened through the pandemic. But all the rest of it, we've been doing this 14 years. We have helped hundreds and hundreds of different clients all around literally the world, from Mexico to Canada to Europe to all around the United States as well. And so we have that experience. And yes, we constantly evolve as well to make that user experience the best possible. But we have all the things that you need to be able to help you through all of this.
Yeah, and the backbone is solid. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's been so great for our users moving forward. We had a lot of new clients this last year. I mean, we had over 100 new clients, which was surprising. We have a lot of our regular clients came back, but we had all these new people that were sort of finding themselves in this, I've never done an online auction before. And it's really fun to know that our name is sort of synonymous with online auctions. I think that's really cool. But we do so much more than that. And the tools that we've been able to hone in because of COVID are just now better prepared to take on whatever randomness that 2021 has. So I think it's really important to just recognize that some of the tools are new and shiny, but the backbone is always solid.
Well, Kayla and Melanie, thank you so much. Here's the best advice that I can give you is you should hopefully have already called Auction Frogs with wanting to do a live event. Maybe you've used us for years in the way of mobile bidding, touchless check-in and check-out and all that. But when you're talking to your auction engineer and your fundraising specialist, make sure that you have talked to, whether that is Kayla or one of our other staff, is what is that contingency? What is that plan? We're here to be able to help you in whatever way we can, as always, to navigate what is happening so that you have the most successful event, virtual or in person. So get a hold of us. We'll get together a plan for you so that we can seamlessly be able to pivot if need be.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Frog Talk, an Auction Frogs podcast series all about events and fundraising in a post-2020 world. For more information on Auction Frogs and the services we offer, visit auctionfrogs.org today.